Oh, hi, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Jillian, and we're going to talk about the Anna Nicole opera.
I always want to call it the Anna Nicole Smith opera, but I feel like that's redundant, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any significance as to why he left the Smith off of the title?
I think it makes it slightly enigmatic.
Enigmatic. Yes.
Because, it's about Anna Nicole, but it's about her and her pursuit of the American dream.
Definitely. All right, so favorite parts, Jillian. What were your favorite parts?
I really liked the music at most points. I think it was a nice mix of slightly atonal, chaotic music, like almost Schomburgian, but then there was these jazz Broadway parts in it that were nice, and they fit. And I loved the costumes. They were glittery and sparkly. And if we're going to be talking about specifically, of the plot, the second act, I think, was way more profound than the first act. The first act set it up to be ridiculous, and that was necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But, the second act, with the amount of build-up that it had, with, her basically going, under with her drug use, and with her son, and her son's death, ultimately, in the build-up with the camera people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was definitely, the second act was definitely, I think, the best.
I would agree. I felt like the first act, they were setting up so many sort of American dream ideas. First, it's like the fame and the reporters, and then the breast implants and her body image, and then marrying the rich husband. All of that was sort of like this big setup for a tragic downfall that we saw in the second act. I would say my favorite part, though, was probably, it was my favorite and my least favorite part all in one, was the number about her getting the breast implants. So
yeah, that's definitely, I think, the most memorable part, because that's what popped into my head, too.
Right. And you watch, it's like 20 minutes of watching all these women talk about how important it is to have huge breasts, and at the beginning it was very flashy and funny, and then it seemed to just sort of drag on as though they were drilling it into our heads, and that was when it became my least favorite part. So it was I think it is definitely most memorable, and I think you're right to say that's kind of the peak. I guess it is the peak of the show.
You could say that that's when Anna Nicole's career really happened. She wouldn't have been on Playboy. She certainly wouldn't have gotten a reality television show or met, her husband, her second husband.
Right.
But I think that there is something, whether it was the librettist or the composer, who meant all of that to be funny. And I think that it was all meant to be funny. But it was so sad that it wasn't. And it was so true that it wasn't. And I think that's the difference between the female and the male perspective on this opera. You might not agree, but...
Please expand on your idea of the female perspective on this opera.
Well, I remember there were those 4 women sitting in the doctor's office, singing, just harmonizing, I think, the doctor's part, and it was just them talking about how their bodies are inadequate. And I think the way that the music was going, I think it was meant to be funny, because it was kind of squawky, it was very Broadway. But in actuality, it wasn't, and and I mean, maybe this is sexist of me, but I think because it was written by a man, and I'm not sure who the librettist was, we should look that up, but, I'm pretty sure he was a man too, and, I mean, I think that I think that if the woman had written this opera, it wouldn't have focused that much on her breasts.
Interesting. All right, I'm looking at the librettist right now. It was Richard Thomas wrote the words. He also previously wrote Jerry Springer, the musical.
That's a musical.
Yep, it's a musical.
I thought it was an opera. I guess I was wrong.
I guess you were. Well, I wonder, again, because that scene just dragged on for so long, I wonder if the male perspective is really all that different from the female perspective. But I think what that also ties into is the anti-Americanism subtext that we see throughout the entire opera, and I think
yeah, but just real quick before we leave the tits behind, I think that there is something to be said about the hyperbole of the boobs in the opera, and maybe it's not just female versus male, because I mean, it's not even just that the music goes on for a long time, but her breasts are humongous, and I think it, I think that a woman would have written about it now that I think about it more, because it culminates in her back pain, which ends up being the reason why she takes pain medication.
Right. And which is her downfall.
Right. So the same thing, I mean, story-wise, the same thing that brought her to her fame also killed her, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I think that I take back what I said about it being a man versus woman thing. Because it was important to the plot.
It was, and I think the interesting thing for me wasn't necessarily just the breast size, but the uniformity of all of the implants on the nurses in that sort of Broadway-esque scene you're talking about, and just like this I don't know, it's like this cookie cutter shape was implanted on all of the women, and I think that really ties into not a male versus female perspective, but perhaps a American ideal perspective, and that whole thing we're talking about of the American dream. So I'd really like to transition into the anti-Americanism.
Sure.
Because I think that it was sort of like, it was almost insulting the way they completely gloss over her life in small town Texas, where let's see, what was it? I forget what the town was called. It had that really weird pronunciation.
Mexico, but it was Mexico or something, but it was not.
And they called it Mexico or something. Oh, I wish I should have my program. Anyways, but they totally gloss over how terrible her life is there, and put her in a gold chair and focus on, how she's just going to be famous and she's going to be a star, and that's going to erase all of the things that she hates about her life. And I think that is sort of the American dream. The American dream is if you become famous, you're gonna live above all of the crap about everyday life that bothers you. You're gonna rise above all of it. You're not gonna be bothered. You're not gonna be upset. You're not gonna feel, unhappy or unfulfilled. So I don't know. I don't know how other countries perceive us, but I worry that that's how we're being perceived, and that this opera is a very good example of, I don't know, how we come across.
Right, because Mark Anthony
shallow.
Turnage is British.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I mean, I remember when we were seeing the opera and I said that the Walmart scene was very heavy-handed and it was unnecessary because there wasn't really that much music in that scene. It only lasted a couple minutes. But you said that, I mean, it was true. And it is true. The way, in that scene, the Anna Nicole is, like, she works at Walmart. She worked at Walmart. And so this giant Walmart sign comes down, and these old people who are the Walmart greeters get on, and they're, like, moving slowly through the stage, and Anna's kind of falling back with them because she's not having back pain yet. But, there's old people on the stage, and Anna's kind of getting stuck behind them, and moving very slowly.
Well, and she's miserable because she's not making very much money, and she's living in a bigger city, so she thought that, you know, that was going to bring the kind of excitement that she was looking for. So I thought it was again, kind of this, like, anti-American idea of like the options available to us, and it paints this picture of, like, well, you can work, you know, minimum wage, live on nothing for this big, you know, faceless corporation, or you can go sell your body. And those are your options. So I think it's like,
I mean, well, that's true in America, and the opera certainly portrayed that. I think it was true for Anna Nicole, and I think it's true in most other countries too. Even though if it's not Walmart, it's a sweatshop or prostitution. Like, those are the options. But I mean, I think the reason why they did an Anna Nicole opera and why she's especially famous is because she was rags to riches, and that is the American dream.
Right.
And I mean, there was an aria about that in here too. And I was just gonna say, I think, if I really think about my favorite part, there was this beautiful, beautiful aria that almost came out of nowhere. I believe it was right after Anna Nicole got married, and she was just, you know, singing about, you know, coming out of the slums, how she's gonna live the American dream. I think she said she's gonna rape the American dream or something.
Yeah.
And the courage in that was just so beautiful. And the soprano Sarah Joy Miller she was a good singer, and she sang that very well. And I mean, that aria I could see being standard repertoire for auditions and things like that. I mean, it'd be hard for this opera, I think, to become standard repertoire, and we can talk about that later. But
no, I agree, and it was a really beautiful moment. I think probably one of the more, like, vulnerable moments in the opera, because you don't have a lot of I would say it was a big ensemble cast, and you didn't really get a whole lot of arias and characters sort of giving any sort of inner dialogue.
Yeah, especially not in the first act. Yeah. It's all kind of just jokey in the first act. And what I thought was very interesting, and Maggie and I are working on some opera things that particularly center around comedy in opera, and it really struck me how easy it was for this opera to get a laugh from the audience. And I don't know if it's because everyone knew what was coming and there was a lot of tension because of that, because we know the tragedy of Anna Nicole, or because of the ridiculousness of just saying shit in a classical setting. just automatically gets a laugh, which is very relieving to me because I'm trying very hard to write funny lyrics, and maybe I don't have to.
Right. I think the surprise factor of using vernacular language, not just swear words, but all sort of, unusual language, that provides the audience a moment to be surprised, and that usually gets a laugh. But I think you're right that there is an intriguing notion to already knowing what's going to happen and sort of setting the bar for that kind of tension. It lends itself to comedy. So I think it was a combination of the two, and I think it's I don't know. I think that you could actually go a long way on just the tension alone of, oh, we know this has a sad ending,
right?
And then you do ridiculous things. And
I mean, it's like in Wagner, in Siegfried specifically, he makes like a joke, and it's funny not because it's actually funny, but because you want to laugh, because you're not laughing for like 16 hours, however long that thing is. It's true. I think, but there are plenty of comic operas that, they set up funny situations. It's almost like this was almost like the difference between watching, like, I don't know, like some kind of sitcom where you expect to be laughing, and then Nicole is like the equivalent of, I don't know, like Breaking Bad, where Breaking Bad is like a very serious show and nothing is going well, but it has these moments of like funny dialogue that force you to laugh again, because like you need to laugh, you need to release the tension from all the suspense and all the intrigue. So yeah. What is it that Jesse says? He's like shit, chemistry. Yeah. And that's become a meme.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. Good. Yeah, and it's stuff like that where you, like, if you step back, you realize you're watching a very, very dark show. But
I wonder if people did realize. I was wondering that, like, if we were the only two people who thought that whole boob scene was getting, like, borderline not okay.
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
yeah.
Or if like, and I would be curious to see what people who don't know the Anna Nicole story thinks of this opera as they see it while not doing any research beforehand. And there are plenty of people my age who don't know.
Great.
Because she was a reality show before.
Yeah, like before there were reality shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't know all the details. I basically just knew that she married rich and was famous and then died. So I think like we couldn't be alone in thinking that it was a very disturbing storyline. But again, perhaps that's the perfect fodder for comedy, because you do set up this suspense that has to be broken with laughter.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we don't have to worry so much about writing funny words and setting up funny situations.
Yeah, definitely.
Or not even. Maybe just saying silly things. I don't know.
I would like to talk about the music.
Okay, I suppose that's important.
Mark Anthony Turge is known, he comes from the jazz world, which I like, but I'm worried that this isn't going to become standard repertoire because it's not going to be respected because he's not a classically trained classical composer. And that sounds silly, and maybe I'm underestimating the progressiveness of classical listeners because, we have standard repertoire like Berg and Richard Strauss and things like that. Although, still that's like 100 years ago. But, I mean, it worries me that because he has Broadway roots, because he, there were jazz aspects to this opera, it won't...
And Broadway characteristics to the music, or musical characteristics.
Right. But, I mean, there are some things about the music that I didn't like, although for the most part I thought it was fabulous. I felt like the voice parts were often disconnected from the orchestra, and I'm sure that was done on purpose, but it got to the point, because it happened so often, that you just didn't register the orchestra anymore.
Right.
You would
right.
just hear them doing something, and you wouldn't really be listening because you'd be trying to pay attention to what the singers were doing.
Right. I did feel like there was a disconnect between the orchestra and the singers, and that, I guess that to me doesn't so much spell like an anti-opera feel, but it does lend itself to more of a musical theater.
Oh, no. It's definitely not anti-opera, because there are definitely operas. Like Thomas Adès in his The Tempest that the Met did, last season? It was very much like that. And I mean, there's a lot of classical music that is branching off of that. I'm just not sure it was appropriate for this story.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just my, as Mr. Lebowski would say, that's just my opinion, man. But, obviously Mark Anthony Turner would disagree, and I'm sure, a lot of people loved this opera, so I'm sure they would disagree as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Wait, just kidding. I was leaving. We'll edit this.
Yeah, we can edit it.
Oh, tired Maggie.
Sleepy Maggie.
What else is there to talk about this thing?
I don't know. The most ridiculous parts. The cameras.
Oh, yeah.
I've been thinking about it, trying to think of other ridiculous aspects. I guess the giant bobblehead dogs. Do you remember when she goes on the Larry King show? And I thought that was another really ridiculous, just unnecessary spectacle.
The weird Disney character.
Oh, yeah, the weird Disney character animals were really, it was like, it
didn't even serve a purpose.
Forced.
It was very forced. Because the whole time those were there, I was like, oh, what are those going to do? Like, what's the relevance? Right. But they didn't even mention them. She kind of just looked at it. And obviously it represented, like, her coming into her Disney princess ideal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was weird. It was unnecessary.
It felt like a second, I don't know, like what am I trying to think? It was like a last minute decision. It felt like it was just thrown in there.
Yeah, definitely. But
the cameras actually weren't like that, though. I felt like the people as the cameras were pretty effective in conveying the sort of pressure she felt as she got closer and closer to
definitely
overdose. So those I liked.
They were so
also
graceful.
I liked because they were like, what?
They were so graceful.
Yeah, they were so graceful, and they had like pointed toes, and the first like 6 or so to come on stage, their cameras were especially like nice and shiny, and then as the chorus members were added, I noticed the cameras were less.
They were just like
impressive
cardboard.
Yeah, just cardboard cutouts. But I thought it was interesting that those first 6 were like, they were very sort of iconic old cameras too.
Yeah.
Which was
One ridiculous thing, which happened right after the Disney animals, was when she first got to her second husband, I forget his name, his home, and she was asking for a ranch, and this was before they got married, and he was just, I don't know if he said, like, give me a blowjob, or she was like, I'll give you a blowjob.
Yeah,
but
I think he just, like, insinuated that.
I think that part was it was so well done. It was very well done, I thought. And it was funny. That was legit funny.
Really?
I thought so.
That was not a part I would expect you to categorize as legitimately funny.
I mean, like, it was her choice. She was asking for way more than just the means to survive.
That's true.
And he was asking for a BJ, so she obliged. You know, and it was done very well. It was funny. Yeah,
I think some of the efficacy of that moment was lost on me because I read it in the program, and the description for that scene was almost exactly those lines that you described, like, I want a ranch, and then he said something to the effect of, it won't come for free or something. But I did like the majority of the program being these, like, shortened, sometimes it's just like one sentence description of the scene. Like, the way that it starts was like, Nicole is fabulous. She looks fabulous. Something very simple like that. I thought it was a sort of great modern take on the synopses that we read of other operas that can be very convoluted and,
Well, I mean, other operas have way more complicated plots. Like,
I suppose.
The classic Mozartian is just like, he's dressed up as her and she's trying to trick him.
Right.
And this is just like Nicole is Nicole, And
but like in the beginning it's like Nicole is this. It's like a very declarative, simple sentence. And then there was some complexity about, like, her mother and her cousin and her aunt who she loved, and her mother who she hated, and her father who was never around. Like, I just liked the simplicity of it. I thought that was very accessible.
But I didn't like, the unplottiness at the beginning. I almost wanted it was like previews, and I just wanted the movie to start.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason they don't play a preview for the movie you're about to watch.
I didn't understand why they did it, like, to set her life up. But they could have done it in a more elegant way, I think. I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I think they really
I didn't do it,
the idea of all the reporters, especially in the first act, which really... I didn't care for the chorus of reporters. I thought it was too large.
It was way too big, especially for the amount of money that City Opera has. And I think that's the last thing I want to talk about.
That's a good ending. That's a really good ending point.
What the fuck were they doing putting on a production this huge?
Right.
When they clearly couldn't afford it, they should have gone back to their grassroots.
Right. And it just wasn't necessary. I mean, perhaps the composer really wanted such a large chorus, but I just don't think it was effective.
It wasn't. I mean,
right.
It doesn't, you know how I feel about art. Art is autonomous, and when you put a piece of art out there, when the composer is finished and puts down the pen, it's the conductor's job to interpret, not the composer's. So if they wanted to do, for financial reasons, which are legit, wanted to do half the size of the chorus, instead of 100 people, let's just do 50. Like, it was freaking War and Peace up there.
Yeah.
Like, 300 people on stage. It was ridiculous. That's not, I'm being facetious, but it was ridiculous.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think that that's something that, you and I have talked about a lot. I think, like every business, not just the arts, but especially the arts, should be working towards leaner productivity. It's the way of the future. Like, we can't, obviously, New York City Opera is the proof that, like, we can't support that kind of size when the funding just isn't there.
And I mean, it's a trade-off because, yeah, with a chorus that size, you're hiring a lot more people, giving more people jobs. But in the short run, you are. In the long run, if they had perhaps had a better business model, and Anna Nicole isn't what kicked the bucket. It's definitely not what kicked the bucket for City Opera.
No.
But, you know, they have been making bad managerial decisions for a very long time. Like, since
well, and I remember, you know, they almost folded back in 2009 when I was interning for Gotham Chamber Opera. I mean, Gotham was ready to, you know, step up as their replacement. It was like...
Where are they now?
The writing was on the wall. Yeah.
I mean, that was when they stopped being... Or that was the year before they stopped being at Lincoln Center. Which was a horrible decision because Lincoln Center was going to let them stay without paying rent.
They were?
I just found that out, yeah.
What? Why would they go elsewhere?
Because they thought they would do better as, like, a traveling organization, but they needed to be grounded. Like, the only successful opera houses right now, or opera companies, are ones that are grounded in an institution.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they thought the competition with that was just too great.
Yeah, because they put themselves in competition.
Exactly.
They put themselves in competition with the Metro.
And I think that's the real lesson to take away from this, is that you just really can't try to compete in that way. You can't try to, you can't live next door to, like, the best, I don't know.
Well, it's the best repertory opera house, and New York City Opera has excelled at putting on contemporary music.
Right.
That's what they did, and then they stopped doing that. So of course they're gonna die. And I mean, Anna Nicole is a contemporary piece of music. This was its North American premiere. But it just wasn't enough to save the company, and I mean, they knew that. They announced bankruptcy before the run ended. So no, I don't think they thought, you know. But maybe instead of purchasing the Royal Opera House's giant production that the Royal Opera House can afford, they should have put on their own production of Anna Nicole, which isn't ideal, but it would have been cheaper. Right.
And to brand themselves with that kind of, I don't know, ingenuity, with that kind of, you know, ability to transform larger contemporary productions into something more manageable.
Right. That would have been
perfect.
Great.
It would have been a perfect alternative to the Met, or a perfect, you know, like counterpart.
It's why I can't watch Verdi, I can't watch Puccini anymore, because it's so over the top. You see them with these Franco Zeffirelli productions, which, you know, have, like, every single detail of a bohemian person's apartment, like, to the dust on the floor. It's ridiculous, and
special stuff.
It's so over the top, and it's so dramatic that it makes me laugh, and it's not, you know, when someone's dying of tuberculosis, it's not supposed to be funny.
Right.
But, you know, I find, like, I loved their production of the Ring that they did last season as part of Wagner's 200th birthday, which was just a stage that was able to move, and it wasn't simple in money.
I'm sure it wasn't cheap either.
It wasn't cheap, and it wasn't, like, simple technologically, but it was simple when you just looked at it, and it would just change into a form that fit the scene, and it would stay that way, and it was beautiful, and it made the production enigmatic, which I think the Ring cycle is enigmatic. I mean, it doesn't really take place in any time or place specifically.
Right.
And that worked very well. And they used all this great new technology, which certainly cost a lot of money. But I think the key thing was that it was simple.
Right. It was simple, and it was also, I don't know, I think it worked to sort of let the music speak for itself. And that I don't know. I think that's the long-standing debate of, grand opera versus sort of more contemporary, newer productions.
I mean,
minimalist.
You can find
settings.
like a compromise.
Yeah.
Like I think we saw a production of Faust, that was that was minimalist, but it still had aspects of the set. It wasn't nothing on stage. It was
exactly
certain things on stage that evoked a certain time and era.
Yeah.
And that worked.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably also expensive, but that's because it was the Metropolitan Opera.
Well, it certainly wasn't, it's not as expensive as, like, the, Aida with the elephants and all the animals, or La Boheme with the horse-drawn carriage.
Yeah.
It's definitely a leaner budget for, as operas go. I just wonder if you're looking at the original opera houses being very large, the idea was to create a huge spectacle that you could see, from way back at the back of the house.
But the original opera houses weren't actually like that. Like, do you remember back when we took History of Opera, we learned about the first opera in Venice was just, like, at a party.
That's true. Well, that was like...
I mean, that's different than the opera we're talking about, but I guess my point is that opera evolves, and it needs to evolve to fit the budget of the American arts society situation we have right now, which isn't a lot. So,
well, the real problem there is that the audience isn't evolving, and it isn't
the
growing.
managers don't think the audience is evolving, but we are living proof that the audience is evolving.
I guess that's true. I guess we are part of the audience.
Damn straight.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, my name is Maggie.
My name is Jillian.
And this is the first installment of Fresh Squeezed Opera.
Yay.
Leave your comments below.
Wait, say that again.
I said leave your comments below.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
We did it. We're geniuses.
We did something.
We did something. That's right. We did something.